So it was the 12th of September 2015, and I joined a group of tourists going on a kayak tour out of Moss Landing. It was cold and misty and extremely still. I was in a two-person kayak with my friend Charlotte, and there were, I think, 3 or 4 other kayakers in the little group that went out with us, and there were a lot of other people in boats on the water already. And we paddled out of Moss Landing. As you know, you go past the sea otters and harbour seals, and normally you have to sort of paddle quite far out to even see any sort of whale if you're lucky enough to see one. But that day there were a lot of whales all around and very, very close. So close to shore that even I think a couple of stand-up paddleboarders have paddled out from Moss Landing. And I worked as I forgot to mention this, I worked as a whale, as like an assistant on a whale watching boat in the Canary Islands when I was a teenager, to make sure that boats don't get too close to the whales and harass them. And as well as doing that, I take photographs of their fins for ID. So I'd seen a fair few whales before, and Charlotte is an accountant, and she'd never seen any whale before in her life. And it was full on. I mean, like when you're whale watching, you're supposed to keep like a distance, and our guide made that very clear. You don't want to harass the whales, and you don't want to get hurt. But that's okay when you can see where the whales are. But it's very difficult when there's suddenly whales arriving from different directions. Like you can't outrun a whale on a kayak, and you can't move away from a whale that you can't see if it's coming up to lunge feed underneath you. So we did our best to keep our distance, and I think we were pretty much ready to go in. You know, we could smell their fishy broccoli breath, and it was wafting over us, and got some amazing looks, and it was totally wonderful whale watch. And we then turned back to Moss Landing, and we started paddling back to shore, and we'd finished. And then suddenly a humpback whale just came out of the water, about 2 or 3 kayak lengths away from us and ahead of us. And I remember just sort of seeing the water, and it was so black calm that day, and then just seeing the front of its sort of snout coming out, and it was like an elevator shooting up in the side of a hotel or something. It moved so quickly, and it came from nowhere, and then it was above us. And I remember thinking the things I thought were very simple. There was no fear because it happened so quickly. One was, oh look, that's a whale, it's very close. And then the second thing was, oh no, it's going to land on us. And then I thought, we're going to die now, because it was so big and so inescapable. So I thought, we're going to die now. It was so big, and I remember looking up at it and seeing it as it came down towards us, and I could see its ventral pleats, I could see the tubercles on its rostrum, I could see all of the bumps on the leading edge of its pectoral fins, and just the level of detail was so strange, because you normally see that stuff through the water or quickly as it comes up and goes all back again, but it was just sort of looming at us. And then I can't remember what happened next. I replayed the video of it, and you can see 2 dots in the kayak in the video that a tourist shot. One of them gets really small, and that's me at the back of the kayak, further away from the humpback. And I think what I did was I threw my paddle away, and I just flipped the kayak to run away from the whale as much as I could. And the other one stays exactly the same height, and that's Charlotte. And she was just transfixed, looking up at it. As we later learn, as it looked down onto her, because you can see in the video it sticks its eyes further out as it rotates. And then I was underwater, and I remember moving incredibly quickly underwater. I love diving in the sea and swimming around, but I've never moved that fast. I didn't think it was possible to move that fast. That feeling of being in air or being tumbled around in like if you jump off a cliff or something into the water, you know that your stomach lurches, you go over a bump in a car. It was that sudden, just acceleration, but in water. And I remember being very sort of white, and I'm thinking, oh, okay, well I'm dead. I'm in shock. All my arms and legs are broken, so this is just the bit where I fade out, or it's the bit where it starts to really hurt. But strangely, I just thought I seemed to still be conscious, and then I could feel, and then I got like sort of spun around like a doll, like again, and I think that must have been as the tail like moved, as the whale made off away from where we were, and then I had a life vest off, and so I could feel that sort of gently pulling me up, so I swam with that, and I remember it took what felt like some time to get back to the surface. So I think in retrospect what happens was that I turned the kayak, its pectoral fin hit the nose of the kayak, and that pushed the kayak and us down underwater, but the impact shot us out of the kayak underneath the whale and the kayak, because I don't understand, we were pushed out of the kayak, but we didn't have any bruises or cuts or anything, and we had our skirts on, and we were, you know, my feet were around the pedals, you know, of the rudder, and then I got back to the surface, and I saw Charlotte's head bobbing around with a big grin, and I thought, that's impossible, you know, she could be dead. You know, I'd assumed, I'd known for sure that she was dead because she was closer to the whale than I was, and then she was alive and I was alive, and the kayak bobbed up and people came over and we grabbed onto the kayak, and then a whale came along the surface, like straight towards us, and came just underneath us and flew just next to us. And I was thinking, I know that whales aren't aggressive towards people. It's very rare for them to do something that might seem aggressive. But what's going on? What, you know? And then Kate Spencer sped over in her fast raft. I didn't know that was Kate Spencer. I thought that this sexy black speedboat was the police or Coast Guard coming to rescue us. And we looked up at them and thought, brilliant, they're going to save us now. But they just kind of shouted and said, "Are you okay?" And all the tourists on the boat were taking lots of pictures, and there was Sanctuary Cruises vessel on the other side of us with, like, you know, the whole boat was leaning over, everyone just taking pictures, and we were floating in the water. I don't think anyone had realised that the whale had landed on top of us, apart from people on our kayak trip who'd been looking at us, because we were away from where all the whales were feeding. So everybody else is looking, and was looking to the side of us, back out to sea. And so most people, if you see the video, it swings round to the side to catch the whale. And so I think most people just saw a splash and then saw us bobbing in the water and thought, they got knocked out of their kayak by the splash. And we were in shock and sort of just grinning and shivering. And we thought, surely they're going to, you know, rescue us now. But actually, they just asked us to get back in the kayak, and they tipped the water out, and they tied it to another one. We paddled back to shore, and I kept saying to Charlotte, you know, what the F just happened, you know, expletive, 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 like that was absolutely insane. And she just said, shut up, we're not talking about this until we're safely back on shore. And we paddled out, and I remember just seeing all these school children, there must have been like a school group who were also just paddling out of Moss Landing, and saying, a humpback just breached on us. And I think they didn't understand what I'd said, and they all just went like, and I thought, oh no, like no one's going to believe us, you know, because I didn't know that somebody had filmed it. I didn't know that anybody had even seen it, apart from the guys who were with us. And they were really upset because they'd just been looking and they'd seen us one moment, and then they'd just seen a whale land on us, and then we'd been gone. And there was just this white water, and they were, I think, the most upset, the people who actually had been on the surface. And then we got out, and they gave us a cup of hot chocolate, and we got in our car and we drove home. We were staying in an Airbnb, and our friend Louise was in charge of renting it. And she said, we arrived, and she said, you're late, we've had to pack all your stuff for you from your rooms, and if we don't move out soon, there's going to be a $25 late fee. I said, like, a humpback whale just landed on us, And our friend Louise said, well, that's fine, but if you don't get your bags out of here soon, there's going to be a $25 extra charge for the rental for the late checking out. And we both started to think, no one's ever going to believe us. They're going to think we're exaggerating or making this up. And then all my friends in that group left, and I was going to go camping in Big Sur with another friend who lived in San Francisco and his parents. And they drove up on the road, and I was sat by the side of the road in Aptos. And I said, a humpback whale just breached on me. And they said, oh, that sounds strange. And I said, look, I'll show you. And I made them drive to the Monterey Bay kayaks, and I showed them the kayak. But it had a dent in it, but the dent is not as impressive as you think, you know, a humpback jumping onto you would cause. And I guess a piece of molded plastic is very hard to deform, and it was very bent. But I think he was imagining like a boat like bent in two or something. So I think they didn't really believe me or thought I was exaggerating. And then we went camping in Big Sur, and that night we were stood on just overlooking the sea, and I was having a beer and he was having a beer, and my friend said to me, there's a tarantula on your shoulder. And I said, there's a tarantula on your shoulder. And he said, no, mate, there's a tarantula on your shoulder. And I, still thinking he was joking, just went, whoa, and just like went towards him, and he went, and just like backed off. And then I felt like this like, I was like, oh, something does feel a bit strange there. So I just whipped my shirt off and threw it on the ground. And there were some other people in the campsite, and I think they just thought, like, who's the weird guy who's drunk too much, you know? But then this tarantula just, like, scuttled out, and I thought, what's going on today? And I just thought, how could I describe any of this to anyone and then believe me? And so eventually, my friend, his parents, he was there camping with his girlfriend at the time, and his parents hadn't met her before. So I kept saying, the humpback whale, and trying to talk about it. And they were like, yeah, that's really interesting, Tom. But so, tell me, what do your parents do? And I just, yeah, it was very weird and very anticlimactic for such a dramatic thing. And I remember lying awake and just sort of looking up in the tent and just sort of still seeing that picture of this whale with all the water streaming off it, just sort of frozen there. And I remember thinking, I must remember this. Like, I'm never going to experience something like this again. I must, like, try and freeze it in my head. And then we drove back to San Francisco, and I was Googling every second, you know, like, whale, humpback, Monterey Bay, in the hope that somebody had taken a photo or something. And then I saw this YouTube video, and I was like, yes, people are going to believe me. But then, like, there was 200,000 people had watched it, and then by the time I was getting on my flight home the next day, I think 1 million people had watched it. So I phoned my mum, and I was like, you're going to see the story, I'm fine, everything's okay. And then I got on the plane, and when I'd landed, like, another couple of million people had watched it, and I had hundreds of missed calls on my phone, and people were phoning my work and the BBC, previous employees, my employers, my family. And Charlotte and I just got sort of swept up in it, and this video went viral, and it became a sort of global news story. There were cartoons of a whale jumping onto a boat in a British newspaper with the Prime Minister and his, like, Chancellor of the Exchequer in a little boat with the leader of the opposition as a tiny whale about to land on them, and it was totally bizarre. And then we had the almost stranger experience of being part of a news cycle, which is really odd, and because suddenly you're just being almost like besieged by people, and you open like Facebook, and there's, you know, hundreds of people are trying to get to you to ask you to talk about it. And then we went to the BBC and told our story, and then it calmed down again, and life slowly went back to normal. But my life couldn't really go back to normal because I was always interested in whales. My fiance actually found a photo album of mine from a holiday to Canada I had as a child, and there were no family pictures in it. It's just postcards of killer whales that I'd collected, and I just thought, I should follow this. And every time anything weird happened or interesting happened in the news with the whale, obviously all of my friends now thought of me as like the whale guy, so they'd send it to me, and I got more and more drawn in to. Well, firstly, I was astonished about how much you could learn about individual whales and the identification of them, and the happy whale and a Cascadia and their work that they've been doing for like over 20 years. And then I got interested in the people, and in the disentanglement, the various disentanglement outfits, and the scientists, and the whale watchers. And I thought, this is an amazing community. Maybe I could make a film about not just a person or a team, but a community who share an interest in an animal, and use that as a way of showing the problems that those animals face, and using my experience as a hook into that to get people interested with this dramatic moment in a much bigger story about people who like whales and about what's happening to whales. And so that's what I did.